Caribbean region. And for stakeholders who've been asking, who are based in North America, Canada, and the US, you will hear also from colleagues that these stakeholders and this review would be covered under 2 of the regions today, possibly. So feel free to intervene and ask questions to some of the panelists we have with us today. I'd first like to share the agenda for today's meeting and introduce myself. My name is Monami Molik. I'm the Civil Society Liaison for the UN Network on Migration Secretariat, and it's very good to see stakeholder colleagues here again to discuss the regional reviews. We will post in the chat box a copy of today's agenda, which also includes some guiding questions for when the discussion floor opens in a little bit of time after the panelists are speaking. The discussion questions are just meant to guide those of you who seek to know more information or would like to share information and updates from your stakeholder organizations from different parts of the world. And you may have specific questions about both the process and the thematic priorities that will be taken into focus in the various regional reviews. So after this opening presentation, where I'll overview the roadmap for stakeholders in just a bit, we will then hear from Azra Karim Rajput, who's the Senior Regional Policy Officer at the Secretariat of the UN Network on Migration. And Azra will give us an overview of the regional reviews in a global perspective, including an overall timeline and preparations. After Azra, we'll then hear from colleagues from 3 different regional networks. We'll first be joined from the African region by Gideon Rutaremwa, who is the Population Affairs Officer in the Social and Policy section at Gender, Poverty, and Social Policy Division of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, as well as Sarah Carl, who's the Regional Policy and Liaison Officer for IOM for West and Central Africa. We will then hear from the European region from Mr. Amar Taha, who is the Senior Regional Liaison and Policy Officer for IOM. And lastly, we will hear from the Latin American and Caribbean region from Ms. Pamela Villalobos Koniger, who is a Senior Social Affairs Officer for the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. We will then open the floor for a 55 minutes of interactive discussion. At that point, we would ask you participants to raise your hands if you wish to speak. We also have a list of speakers that I will call upon based on the many requests that we've received for today's meeting. And then we will have a closing to summarize the key recommendations and next steps. And we'll be joined by Mr. Paul Tacone, who's a migration policy specialist at the International Labor Organization and a member of the UN Network on Migration Executive Committee. So before I hand the floor over to Azra, I just want to remind and share, again, in the chat here, we'll post this roadmap for stakeholder engagement in the regional reviews, which we've circulated a few weeks ago. And more recently, we provided translations of this roadmap in several languages. The roadmap lays out, beginning today, the various entry points for stakeholders. And just sequentially, first, what you will see in the roadmap after these global consultations is a set of pre-consultations that would take place in each of the regions and which would take place at least 12 weeks before each regional review meeting. These pre-consultations are dedicated for stakeholders to discuss the thematic subject issues, the GCM objectives, possibly organized into the 4 thematic clusters, as they have been for roundtable discussions at last year's International Migration Review Forum. And the idea for these pre-consultations is to give sufficient time for stakeholders to be able to identify your priority thematic issues on the GCM, the gaps or challenges or progress in how their implementation has progressed in the region, and your recommendations, but to give it in sufficient time so that it would feed into helping to shape the discussions of the regional review meeting itself. You'll see in the roadmap, after the set of pre-consultations take place, there would be the one multi-stakeholder consultation held most likely one day prior to each regional review meeting in person. And these multi-stakeholder consultations are the opportunity for stakeholders to come together in person and to, again, discuss the thematic priorities, as well as produce a summary report, which would be taken into the regional review meeting itself by a designated civil society or stakeholder rapporteur who will present the findings in the regional review meeting. In addition to these consultations, there will be other consultations open to stakeholders or dedicated solely for stakeholders in various regions that would be organized either thematically or in some other format. And we'll hear from colleagues from each region about the plans detailed for specific regions. And lastly, you'll see on the roadmap that we would be opening up discussion spaces for stakeholders on the Network Migration Hub. The discussion spaces will be one per region, where stakeholders will have an opportunity beginning in January 2024 and onwards to post your own inputs, recommendations, parallel reports, or questions. And it would be an interactive floor for and a space where you can continue to post, exchange information and inputs. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Azra to take us through an overview overall of the regional review process. Please go ahead, Azra.
Thank you so much, Monami, and thank you also for having me to lay out a little bit sort of our thinking, the network's thinking when it comes to the framework of the regional reviews. This second round of regional reviews is again a really important opportunity for member states, but also for stakeholders to discuss at the regional level to discuss sort of what they have done in the implementation of the DCM, to use it as a platform to strengthen regional collaboration, to exchange lessons learned, to exchange challenges. And this really comes from the understanding that, you know, most migration takes place within regions, and that's really something that's very clearly outlined into the DCM. So the second round of regional review is another opportunity for us to bring you all together with member states and discuss exactly those opportunities for strengthened regional collaboration. The UN Network on Migration has prepared, its executive committee has prepared an overall framework for member states, and that is at the request, of course, of the member states themselves. The framework has been available to you and to the member states since March this year. And ultimately, what we will do is support member states throughout the process, support stakeholders throughout the process, and then brief the General Assembly on the outcomes of the regional reviews in the second half of 2024. So this is sort of the process that we have outlined that we will be assisting you with. There is a lot of opportunity for exchange as part of this regional review. So all the regional consultative processes on migration have been invited to review the GCM of at the regional level, at the cross-regional level, at the inter-regional level. And then all of those conversations will be brought together by under the UN regional commissions that have all for each region committed to hosting a review meeting for the GCM as well. So this is the overall framework. and you can consult that framework if you would want to. You can consult that on the UN Network on Migration's website. So as to the organization in every region, my colleagues will be speaking to that as to how they will be organizing those meetings. Time-wise, it is important to also realize that what we are really looking to do is to bring the regional perspective to the global conversation. So the regional reviews will be taking place next year, and then there'll be the briefing to the General Assembly end of 2024, and then those outcome reports, those discussions will really feed into the 2026 IMRF. That together with national reports that member states will then be preparing in 2025. So both that national perspective and that regional perspective will be represented at the global level in 2026 for the next IMRF. So this is the overall timeline that we have proposed to member states, that many of the member states are now working on with us. And that will hopefully also help you as you prepare to engage in the process, to ensure that the stakeholder voices are heard, to ensure that you work with your respective member states and regional organizations in making this process a valuable one. So I think that's as a global framework. This is what I would just like to start off with before now handing over back to Mon-Ami and then to the colleagues from the UN regional commissions and the colleagues from IOM who will be explaining a little more what specifically they are doing and working on within the regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azra. And Azra will stay on the panel too, so when the discussion section opens, you can feel free to ask questions to any of the panelists. So we'll turn it over now to colleagues from the African Regional Network. So I turn it over first to Gideon, to Remwa, and then to Sarah Carl. Please go ahead, Gideon.
Thank you, Mon-Ami. Thank you, Azra, for giving us this global perspective. We are so fortunate. We are currently, we started today our Pan-African Forum on Migration. And as part of that, earlier today, we had our side event on GCM, meeting with some of our stakeholders, the 13 champion countries, and also some youth representatives. So the process has actually begun, and we are so glad that it's beginning this way. But in terms of the time frame, I think we've been thinking of having our a continental review in early October 2024. What that means is that prior to that, we'll have to do all the engagements with our stakeholders and from civil society, youth groups, and also our focus, unlike the previous review where we focused on the voluntary national reviews, we intend to focus more on the sub-regional engagements, the regional consultative processes, the regional economic communities, the RECs. They are particularly important in as far as migration is concerned in Africa. There is a call, and even in the meeting we had earlier today, the regional economic communities were really calling upon us to engage with them, and if we need assistance, what kind of assistance that we need. I think one of the issues, I wouldn't call it a challenge, because we never, when we did the initial review nearly 2 years ago in 2021, we didn't start with creating a continental network. And the sub-regions actually went ahead of us. The several sub-regional sub-regions have their own sub-regional networks. Even some member states have their national networks that are very functional and operating and discussing GCM issues. And but at the continental level, we don't have a network, a GCM network. And we've been in discussions to start this network, and we got clearance and permission from the UN leadership team sometime around 20th of September. And we are planning to have our first meeting. We've already drawn draft terms of reference and also a draft roadmap for the review. So we are planning to start this network. Our inaugural meeting should be this coming month, the week of 13th, or around about there. That's when we are hoping to have this network initiated. We worked with almost everybody at a previous review, but just as the UN family partnering together to conduct the review, but we'll formalize it and we move forward in that regard. The other aspect I wanted to talk about, perhaps, would be that prior to that, I think all the regional economic communities, most of them have their meetings to discuss the Global Compact in the time before October, and we want to take advantage of that so that we engage with them, even those who perhaps are not planning to have their meetings. Since we will have adequate time, we plan to engage with them as a continental network. We'll work with them and ensure that they have their meetings so that all this information we collect feeds into the continental report early enough in time to have the global report at the global level. I think at this point, I think that's what I want to say, and then we can take it from there moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay, very good. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today and to talk a little bit about the plans and for the regional reviews, and with regard to, in particular, the stakeholder engagement, which is so crucial for us. My name is Sarah Karl. I'm from IOM for the region of West and Central Africa, and I'm representing the regional network on migration for West and Central Africa, which is co-chaired by IOM and Office of the High Commission on Human Rights. And I'm happy to share with you that we have just adopted our work plan for 2023-2024. It was a little bit a longer process than we have wished for, but we made it quite in detail, and we're very happy now that we have this work plan. It is at the moment in basically formattation with the Secretariat, and once it's formatted, it will be available on the Migration Network website, and you can see more in detail what kind of work streams we are planning at the regional network and what we would like to do. We are basically supporting 16 country networks and 9 champion countries in the region. And I would like to thank you, like in particular the stakeholders from the West Africa and Central Africa region who has supported us in drafting this work plan, as we had a stakeholder consultation in May that was very well participated. So thank you very much for giving us all this feedback on this work plan, what you feel like is of added value for us as network in the region to support the GCM implementation of the member states. And just to say 2 points to the to this work plan that you can soon then find on the website, and with you, the engagement of the stakeholders. So we have a dedicated work stream which is co-chaired by ILO and Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights for stakeholder engagement, and we are really looking here forward with a very active engagement with you. Please feel free to reach out to us if you would like to be on our list of stakeholders. If you're from the region, you can reach out under gaspar@iom.int. I will put it in the chat after my intervention. So please feel free to reach out to us. Also, because we are open, we have our regional UN network on migration open to stakeholder participation. So if you would like to participate in any of our thematic work streams, please feel free to reach out to us. Our thematic work streams are on climate change, on migration. There are another one on free movement, in particular with regard to the youth, legal identity, and labor migration. We have one work stream on reintegration of returnees, one on data, one on missing migrants, and one on remittances. So if any of these kind of work streams is like speaking to you and your mandate, please feel free to reach out to us, and we are happy to take you into our work. Now let me come to the regional reviews, and here we have, as Gideon has already also mentioned, and Azra as well, like as part of our regional structure, we are basically having two of the regional economic communities in our region. This is ECOWAS for West Africa and ECAS for Central Africa. So what we are foreseeing in the in going into this continental meeting in October is that probably around spring that we have some sub-regional consultations, basically with ECOWAS and with ECAS. And here we would really, we have in our work plan a dedicated work stream that works on that. And we really have emphasized here the importance of you as stakeholder to be part of these discussions and also to feed in. And what we are discussing at the moment is also the possibility to have like dedicated pre-consultations only with stakeholders for these regional consultations. We did this last year 2 years ago for the first regional reviews. We did a multi-stakeholder consultation, a sub-regional consultation for the ECOWAS region, which was really engaging. It was really good. We had, I think, over 140 participants who discussed one day virtual, and we have a report that is like basically highlighting the outcome. So if you are interested in that, you find this also on the website of the network under the regional reviews. And what we are trying to find there is also how we can feed this in, of course, into the governmental discussion. So we had the rapporteur who then fed in the outcomes of this multi-stakeholder consultation into the governmental consultation under the Regional Economic Commission, ECOWAS. And it was a really good discussion. We also would like to make, of course, sure that your input and your perspective is part of the panels and part of the discussions. So this is definitely some of the areas that we are taking into consideration. So I think I don't want to take much more of your time because it's much more interesting to hear from you guys. So thank you very much, and please feel free to reach out to us if you are interested either in the to participate or in the work plan, as long as it is still not on our website. Happy to share this as well. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I think colleagues and panelists, as each of you present, if you can share on the chat function an email contact for stakeholders for your specific region, that would be super. If we could pass it over now next for the European region to Amr. Amr, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mon Ami. Thank you, Azra, for this Nice introduction. Thanks, Gideon and Sarah. So my name is Amr Taha. I'm the Senior Regional Policy Liaison Officer for IOM's regional office in Europe and Central Asia countries, where I also represent the issue-based coalition on large movement of persons, displacement and resilience, which also acts as the regional UN network on migration for the Europe and Central Asia region. I co-chair the regional network on migration together with UNHCR and with UNDP. And together with the colleagues as the regional network, we have supported the establishment of 15 country networks in the region, which are co-chaired, all of which are co-chaired by the regional, by the resident coordinator and IOM, or someone from the resident coordinator's office. We have held a number of events, and we continue to plan a number of events ahead of the regional review, which include also stakeholder engagement, and as also invited to you by Monami and by Azra and by Sarah just now, please do follow the UN Network on Migration website and the calendar events, where we continue to update information on that. And we sometimes, apologize on behalf of some of our colleagues and partners who sometimes ask us to support them at the last minute on a specific topic. But of course, as the regional review is approaching and is fast approaching, there will be quite a number of events that may be called in on a bit of short notice. But again, we'll do our best to keep that calendar updated. This is a nice segue to go a little bit into the specifics of the regional review. And this is the second regional review that is taking place, has been decided to take place on the 11th of March. That's very important, 11th of March, 2024. And it's going to take place back to back with the Regional Forum for Sustainable Development. The Regional Forum for Sustainable Development, for those of you who, most of you I'm sure are familiar with it, but is a review of the progress made on the 2030 agenda. Now, the GCM regional review is taking place back to back with the Regional Forum for Sustainable Development, which again shows very strong the interconnectedness between the Agenda 2030 and the Global Compact on Migration. So as you can imagine, there will be a lot of discussions on that as well. The session will focus, it's a one-day event, and it's going to be on the 11th of March, as I mentioned. And the sessions will focus on how member states and stakeholders in the region are cooperating on advancing on the GCM. The discussions will focus on both the successes and the challenges of such a collaboration, and also the absence of collaboration where there is a clear need for that. Of course, it will be discussed. And in line with the overall framework and the regional review in the UNECE region, the regional review will enable governments to undertake an assessment on the GCM implementation. It will enable the governments to undertake an assessment of regional progress and the challenges in implementing the GCM, also based on the outcomes from the IMRF, which took place, as you will know, May last year. Discussions, it will also discuss, so the GCM regional review will discuss also the existing initiatives and experiences focused on strengthening the linkages between the GCM and the 2030 agenda, as I just mentioned. It will also serve as yet another forum to strengthen regional cooperation on migration. And of course, it will facilitate the formulation of recommendations which will inform the next global review, which will take place in 2026. So that's a little bit a summary of the objective of the event. Now, to support member states and stakeholders prepare for this, we have set a series of questions which are being developed to help guide the discussions. But we're also holding pre-consultations with member states, which took place already on the 18th of October. And we're also holding a non-governmental stakeholder event, pre-consultations on the 14th of November. Sorry, consultations on the 14th of November. As you may know already by now, in previous years, we've had voluntary national review reports to inform the regional review. This year, we will no longer have voluntary national reports, but we are supporting the engagement of dialogue. So we have, as you know, we've established the GCM talks and we've initiated a number of them, which again, you can find on the calendar on the UN Network website. So I invite you again to please look at those. And as I just mentioned in my opening, we expect to have a few more GCM talks ahead of the GCM regional review in March. So please keep an eye on the calendar on that as well. 2 GCM talks were already held in the region, and I ask my colleagues to please add the UN Network GCM talk website link so you can please refer to that. The multi-stakeholder consultation for the UNECE region prior to the intergovernmental meeting to identify the priorities and areas and to prepare key messages will be held on ahead of the 11th of March, and it will take place in hybrid format. So stakeholders will have to register for both online and offline participation as per the procedures of the UNECE, as the Economic Commission for Europe, and with further details to come from the network. So we'll share the links, the information as it becomes available. Now, this is quite important for the stakeholders, this part here as well, because there will be a stakeholder rapporteur will brief the member states on the findings of the stakeholder consultations at the opening segment of the intergovernmental meeting. So the meeting, again, to summarize a little bit, the meeting will take place on the intergovernmental meeting will take place on the 11th and will be preceded by a multi-stakeholder consultation. And the findings of that multi-stakeholder consultation on the 11th will inform the regional review also on the 11th at the opening session. We will have a rapporteur, and there will be a call, there will be an open call for expression of interest for the rapporteur. So if anybody wants to be that, please keep an eye and please do come forward to us, and we will make sure to take your expression of interest and proceed with that accordingly. I think more or less that's it. Maybe just one last point on how the regional review meeting itself with member states will take place. Similarly to the previous regional review and similarly to the global review, it will be in 4 thematic roundtables, which will provide member states and stakeholders with a space to discuss and to present the GCM, again, in line with a 60-degree vision of the GCM. So member states and stakeholders will be invited to express their interest in speaking and taking the floor at any of the 4 thematic roundtables. The 4 thematic roundtables will not change, so they're the same as those of the regional review and those of the global review. So just for you to know that there's no changes there. And there will be an opportunity for you to engage if you wish to do so. And I'll leave it at that, and I hand over back to Mon Ami, and of course, be online to answer any questions together with the colleagues. Over.
Thank you very much, Amar. And because the European reviews are the first ones upcoming, it's very important to have, I think, a lot of the details you were able to share. I pass it over now to Pamela for the Latin American Caribbean region. Please go ahead, Pamela.
Thank you very much, Monami, for this invitation and for organizing the meeting, and for also to all the colleagues who spoke previously, and so that we are on the same page with what's happening in every region. Now I will switch back to Spanish for the benefit of the stakeholders who are here from the Latin America and Caribbean region. And I forgot to say, as you can see there, I'm Pamela Villalobos, and I work in ECLAC as part of the regional network on migration. Muchas gracias a todos los colegas.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues from civil society organizations and stakeholders, for being here. I would like to start, before touching on the topic of the meeting, I would like to inform you that we have been able to move forward in the deployment and implementation of a civil society participation mechanism. As we have already mentioned in previous occasions, in the region we have developed this participation mechanism. We are also pledged, we have a pledge, a regional pledge, to organize a debate, a regional debate, a debate forum between the different participating organizations and the representatives of Latin American and Caribbean governments. So we have been able to organize this first debate, in which Monami also participated, in Panama. It was held recently in Panama in a offline meeting. I would like also to inform that we will be publishing a report on the meeting, as well as some briefing notes, as well as a video on the meeting held in Panama, with the aim to disseminate the main outcomes and also to raise awareness about the coincidences that we were able to spot in the dialogue between government representatives and civil society organizations, as well as other stakeholders which participated in the meeting. We have also been busy in empowering UN country teams, and following up on other pledges. Now, moving to the topic that gathers us here, we have started the process to organize the next regional review meeting, which will take place in November 2024 in Santiago de Chile. We will be also organizing this meeting, as previous regions mentioned, back-to-back in parallel with the regional conference on populations and development, of the Latin America and the Caribbean. The structure of the meeting has been agreed in a roadmap that has not already been adopted based on the work plan 2023-2024, which has identified some key priority and thematic areas. There is a background noise, I'm afraid. I think someone has a mic on. Would you be so gentle as to turn off your mics, please? Thank you very much. So my apologies, let me get back on track. So again, we have adopted a roadmap which has been based on the work plan for 2023 and 2024, in which we have identified some key priority and thematic areas. As for the thematic areas, they are the following: to boost social inclusion of migrants, to contribute or to push forward the link between migration and development, to promote a change in migration-related narratives, and the last one, saving lives. All these points are the outcome of a long process, which included several debates since the beginning of the previous regional meeting in 2021, the PrEP dialogues on the GCM 2022, and we also took into account the progress declaration. Now, the roadmap I was mentioning, the roadmap adopted in Latin America and the Caribbean, includes a list of actions and activities. Some are permanent and some are short-term. These actions are to be implemented until the end of 2024. This includes the dialogues, the different dialogues on the GCM, what in English is called the GCM talks, saving lives, indicators, KPIs, amongst others. Now, we will also celebrate champion countries meetings, multi-stakeholders meetings. We will also celebrate consultations with regional migration processes. We will also be organizing some inputs to inform the FEMI 2026 on the grounds of the dialogue to analyze the challenges and progress. We will organize best practices exchange. We will also be promoting pledges in the region, and we will be adopting policy papers and communications on specific areas. We will also be participating in multi-stakeholder dialogues with the participation also of the regional consultative processes, which are also leaving room to the participation of different stakeholders. We are also supporting the work of regional networks to further support state members in the region, and we are promoting a further engagement of different social stakeholders, such as civil society organizations. We're also supporting them directly, their work. As I mentioned recently, we organized 2 meetings every month with them, and we promote joint activities. We will be, of course, engaging other relevant stakeholders, such as MPs, regional governments, amongst others. So, all in all, one could say that we are trying to promote a all-government approach in the implementation of the GCM. And as I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, this consultation, the consultation will take place back-to-back to the Regional Population and Development Conference of Latin America and the Caribbean, which again is an intergovernmental conference organized by the CEPAL with a clear participation component. So civil society organizations tend to participate widely to this regional population conference, and this enhances the participation again of different civil society organizations in the consultation and in the previous processes. I have been asked here in the chat box to share the roadmap. It has not been adopted yet, but believe me, as soon as we adopt it, we will be able to share the link to it. And very soon, we will end we will publish the report and the videos, as well as the briefing notes I mentioned before. All this related to the debate or the meeting held in Panama in the framework of the mechanism activities. There's a question here that I don't really understand. What is the name of the group? I am not sure what group you're referring to. I'm guessing here you refer to the civil society participation meeting. It's not organized by the Latin American Commission for the Economy, CEPAL. So again, it's a multi-government effort that coordinates, which is coordinated by the IOM and the everyday life coordination is led by the ILO and the UNPD. So again, the coordination is a Rotary coordination, and these two organizations are the ones in charge of the coordination efforts. They've done it greatly, so we have renewed its mandate.
I will wait here if there are any comments. And on the next round, and I think there's also other colleagues from the region, from the UN agencies here, if need be. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela, very much. And I see we already have questions that are coming in the chat, so thank you for beginning to address those. But this is the perfect time because now we're going to open the floor. So I ask participants to please begin pressing the button to raise your hand if you wish to take the floor. We already have a long list from many of you who requested to speak, so I'm going to call 5 names at a time so that you can turn on your camera and speak, and then we'll stop and go to the panelists for responses, and then we'll do another round. I ask colleagues to please keep your remarks or questions to 1 minute or under, please, because we really want to maximize people from 3 different regions and continents to speak. So if we can begin with colleagues, first with Mr. Richard Lee, secondly with Diana Martinez, third with the colleague from Justicia en Movimiento, which I believe is Marcio, fourth from Victor Janina, and fifth from Dr. Hussein. Please go ahead first, Richard.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So my name is Richard Lee. I'm representing our Ford and
Richard, I think you became muted. You'd have to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I was saying, today I'm representing our Ford, but I'm speaking on behalf of the UK GCM Stakeholder Group. That was born out of FCDO funding and initiated by IOM to support the UK government's contribution to the GCM and sharing and exchanging resources and policies. Currently, we are drafting a work plan with the aim of developing a joint message that will feed into the GCM consultation and influence policy on different thematic areas. The stakeholders, we will be co-leading on activities and roundtables related to GCM objectives, and we are leading and to inform into the regional reviews. And we at AFOD, for example, will be leading on objectives 2, 19, and 20. And we also want to highlight the fact that the group serves as a good platform to maintain open dialogue with the FCDO and on the GCM process to help the implementation, and will continue to expand on to ensure that UK stakeholder voices are represented and heard in the UK and in the regional and global migration forums. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Richard. Diana Martinez, please go ahead.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días o buenas.
Thank you very much. Good morning, one and all. Good morning, good afternoon. I belong to the International Coalition Against Detention, and we would like to warmly thank you for the organization of regional reviews on the GCM. I would like to take this opportunity to underline the importance of ensuring the participation of civil society so that this participation can be as broad and efficient as possible. there is no doubt that we believe that it's very important to make a bridge between regional, national, and global efforts. In our coalition, we are working to engage from this approach on the grounds of peer learnings. We are convinced that all these dimensions complement one another. It is more and more obvious that it's necessary to work with regional and local governments as well as in regional mechanisms in Central America, so that we can connect to the global scale where we can also want to be active. We wish to be able to help identify the existing challenges for the efficient implementation of the GCM, and so to come up with different engagement and commitments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana. I believe next I asked for Victor, Marcio, and then Dr. Hussein.
Muchas gracias, Bonami. Thank you very much, Bonami. I'm going to speak Spanish, and I want to make the following questions.
Preguntas.
I think it has been put in the chat box. The participation of civil society organizations in the multi-stakeholder meeting. Is there any restriction? The number of participants and the number per organization. Secondly, who or are we going to elect, or how it's going to be selected, the rapporteur team that is going to produce the summary or the whole document of the discussions of the multi-stakeholder? I think it's very important that civil society members participate in this team of the rapporteur task. Also, I want to ask if civil society organizations will be able to participate in the regional consultation itself, if they are going to be able to interact with states in the regional consultations, or if you are conceiving just a separate event. I would like to highlight the importance of interaction between civil societies and states during this, and also I would like to know how the inputs of the multi-stakeholder are going to be sent to the General Assembly, how this input is going to be reflected, or we can be sure that the General Assembly is going to receive these inputs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor, for those very good questions. Dr. Hussein, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to those who are joining from abroad. Thank you for the floor. And I would like to make a little resume on the immigration and displacement that are one of the most prominent features of the Middle East societies where we are coming from throughout history. And from the founding of the states until today, the Middle East witnessed large waves of immigration that accompanied the pivotal stages that experience and establish concepts and facts that are still reflects in its general image. What we are trying to do is to combine with all our efforts as International Rights Council, and as personally I am the advisor to the Minister of Displaced in Lebanon, to match between the GCM commitments and actions that can be seen as a guide for states to meet their human rights obligation when it is the design migration governance measures to reduce the risk and vulnerabilities. So we believe that if we can also join with all what is going on today on the regional platform and to match all our efforts to combine it with what is going on, maybe we can reduce this amount of migrants that are moving today
based on the upcoming situation in the Middle East. And I believe that you are all aware of it, especially what's going on in Syria, Palestine, Iraq, and Yemen. So one of the major problems that we are facing is under the name of the displaced or refugees, but after that it turns immediately to migrants and immigration problem. So, and with all these international problems also that we are having, and all this occupation on the other issues like Ukraine and Sudan and now Palestine. So I think that our effort should be also taken into consideration in the regional ongoing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein. And I encourage you actually to join tomorrow's consultation, which would focus on the Middle East region specifically. Thank you.
Okay.
Marcio, please go ahead. Señor Marcio Vinicio, de Justicia en Movimiento, por favor. You are muted.
¿Ahora me escuchan?
Sí.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Hello and good morning. I'm here on representation of the Justice and Movement Network. We operate in the US, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, with more than 47 human rights defenders and entities that work for the rights of migrants and migrant workers. Our main concern today is that the GCM, well, it has to be grounded and be translated into specific actions. We are concerned, or we would like to raise the following. There needs to be a balance between what governments proclaim doing and what us as civil society organizations know they are doing. There is an important gap between both. And for that, we will have to promote participation mechanisms such as these consultations. In our countries, it has been extremely difficult to hear about the consultations you are now celebrating. It's very difficult to get to know when they are taking place, when in fact they are very important and very interesting. It's excellent that the United Nations are promoting these consultations, but at the same time, I would ask you to further disseminate information about the consultations in certain countries, such as Guatemala and other countries in the region. It is very important that civil society organizations know about the existence of these consultations. It's very important because migration is a very sharp reality in these countries when, in fact, governments are more interested in remittances than in migrants. So we need to be part of the consultations, and we need to further democratize these forums. Last, we would like to ask the following. We would like to know what are the next steps and what are the participation mechanisms, the existing participation mechanisms, because again, we want to be part, we want to engage in consultations and regional forums. In our specific case, we are interested in promoting a universal justice so that all migrants with temporary work permits or in an irregular situation, they shall all have access to justice in all the countries of the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcio. So we'll pause here because we have a number of interesting questions and comments and bring it back to the panelists. So I open it up to all of the panelists, anyone who'd like to come in and address some of the questions. Pamela? Yes, and Azra, you as well? Yes, okay, go ahead, Pamela.
Thank you, Monami. I heard the comments and there were also some questions in the chat. So I saw two questions on the chat about the participation of civil society, and I just wanted to make sure that I may not have been clear, because one, I was referring to the Regional Conference on Populational Development, which is organized by ECLAC, and the other group and mechanism I was mentioning was the mechanism for the participation of civil society with regards to migration, specifically in the context of the GCM and the work of the regional network on migration. So there's questions on both of them, I think. So with regards to ECLAC, we try to open up the participation for all civil society organizations, and when we have any restrictions with space, for example, when there's an in-person meeting, we will prefer that there are regional organizations and networks, and allow national ones only if there's enough space. But the idea is to have a very broad participation and to have everybody joining in and following the meetings or participating in person when possible. And we've been doing that for quite some time. So I think we haven't had any particular problems with any organization feeling left outside of one of our activities. And with regards to the specific mechanism for the participation of civil society with regards to migration in the context of the regional network, this is the result of a request by several civil society organizations after the last regional review. And we try to facilitate this and bring them together and have a fora for their own dialogue. The terms of reference were agreed among all the organizations which are participating. Now there's a group that is coordinating, and all the organization, the representatives, etc., it has all been decided directly by the organizations from civil society. So there's no decisions, nominations, or structure that was decided by the network or the UN agencies. It has taken us some time as the regional network, and it has also taken a lot of time and energy from the civil society organizations which are participating, because this was something that had never been done before. So we were all learning together. But I'm very happy to report back to everyone that it is organized. There are representatives divided in different thematic groups, and each of them have a small steering committee. And there's also a coordinating group that meets with the UN agencies bi-monthly. So from early on, we tried to set up this organization to help them to do it. And now it's been working. And as I mentioned, we had this first dialogue with governments. And there, all the civil society participants from the mechanism were designated by the mechanism itself. So I hope that I address some of the questions. There's one there about how the members can join. We will leave some details in the chat because the idea is to have a very broad participation, and there you can go directly to the civil society organizations that are currently coordinating the mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. And to colleagues who are asking to join particular regional communications and stakeholders, please look for the contacts from that regional network. Pamela mentioned she'll post the contact for the Latin American region, and you can email there. Azra, please go ahead.
Thank you, Monami. I'd like to come in a little bit on the question on how stakeholder inputs will be shared with the General Assembly. There's, of course, various ways for that to happen. First of all, we are recommending to member states that they consult with their stakeholder constituencies ahead of the regional reviews, even though this time around we're not necessarily asking for detailed voluntary reports on the progress. We are ahead of the regional reviews, really encouraging member states to make sure that they consult with their stakeholders, that they discuss with stakeholders what the progress is at the regional level, that they discuss with stakeholders how the collaboration within the region is going and what the issues are that they really would want to see discussed when it comes to that stronger regional collaboration. Then so that's, of course, through the member state statements, we already will have some, hopefully, a more consulted voice. Then we, of course, will have the stakeholder rapporteurs. That's what most of the colleagues have briefed on. Amar's briefed on it. Monami briefed as well. So the idea is that we will have again stakeholder rapporteurs. Definitely, this will be the case for Europe, but I really hope that the other regions will also follow that example, and that stakeholder rapporteur will be briefing the member states, and that then again will of course be reflected in the outcome reports of the reviews. Now, those will be available on the network website as an input to the IMRF, and which is organized at the General Assembly level. And then we will have the coordinator of the UN network, now the new Director General of the IOM, who will be briefing the General Assembly towards the end of 2024, based on all those reports, but also just based on the discussions that we've heard. So we, of course, will use that to also make sure that the stakeholder voices are reflected. So the whole idea of the regional review of the global compact, collaboration is that it is a whole of society collaboration. So I think you can count on it that also that there your voice will be reflected again. So I hope that answers. I think there's, of course, a couple of more informal platforms that the network has set up for you to use. We have the GCM talks, and we welcome all of the stakeholders to either with stakeholders or in collaboration with member states come to us and ask for sort of our help in setting up GCM talks. So we're available to support you when it comes to GCM talks at the regional level that can feed into the regional review. And then we, of course, also have the Migration Network Hub, where you will find some stakeholder consultation, what are they called now? Discussion spaces, where there's also space for you to discuss and provide your inputs as part of the regional review process. I know this is a bit less formal, but there are important venues for you to reflect and bring your voices, then influence, let's put it like that, influence the global conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azra. If it's okay with colleagues, I'll take us back to the floor and open up for several more hands raised, given that we have about 18 minutes left for the call. So the next 5 speakers from the floor would be, I'd like to call on Itzel Polo, and then Reverend Jack Amick. Third with Mamadou Goita. Fourth, with Hernan Ruggiero. And fifth, with Paula Cement. Please go ahead, Itzel.
Muchas gracias, Monami.
Thank you very much, Monami. And thank you, Pamela, for your explanation. I was just writing in the chat I would like to propose a following up meeting to talk about the criteria of participation of civil society. More than filling the form, as civil society, we must be included. And again, I go back to what happened in Panama, where several organizations were aware of the event too late, and the space for just one person or two people is not enough. I mean, since 2021, in the first exercise, we continue having the same demands of having a real participation as civil society, also with mechanisms that help to communicate with the states, and considering the following question: how from regional network are you supporting this installation of the regions? With some conversations, I also see that there's something pending, which is creating a national network. My question is, how will it be organized? And also at global level, how it will be organized? Do we have specific working groups? We participate in some of them, but we don't see them reflected in those regional spaces. I don't know the mechanism or the topics that are in those groups of civil society. I mean, we talk about groups and teams, but I don't know the relationship of those working groups with the specific group at global level. We don't see the relationship, but we participated in other projects, like in Honduras, and those specific spaces go to the regional level. Apart from that, we have several questions and concerns in terms of the regional mechanism for participation in the forum last year. There were conversations about who will participate, and the event was already taking place. So these are our concerns. It's been 2 years, and we would like to have a different answer, and we would like to make it from the global, regional, and national level to see changes in the next forum, 2026, but also agreeing to what Pamela said for November. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Itzel. Reverend Jack, please go ahead.
Thank you, Monami. I'm Reverend Jack Amick. I'm the Director of Global Migration for UMCOR, the United Methodist Committee on Relief, which is part of the General Board of Global Ministries of the United Methodist Church. We also have a couple folks online who are regional migration specialists. Part of their role is to learn more about what's happening in migration in the regions and interact with it. We're also part of ACT Alliance, which I also see on the call. A global network of Christian humanitarian organizations. People have asked me why the church gets involved in migration, and I have to say that it's because of several things. One is our history. In 1940, UMCOR got started in the face of World War II by working with displaced people. So we've always worked with folks who are on the move. The second thing, of course, is that we have this mandate as a faith-based organization to care for the stranger and care for those around us. The concern that I have is that we honor the dignity of all people, and especially those who are vulnerable. And so that's partly why we engage in these conversations, to say that the church cares about migrants. And to that end, we have given a donation to the UN Network on Migration through the Multi-Partner Trust Fund that will allow them to bring more voices to these regional reviews. And so our hope is that there will be more seats at the table for those who are representing migrant voices around the world. So I would encourage other organizations that are of like spirit to join in and to give to that particular window in the multi-partner trust fund and join us in widening the table and making more space for these voices. Thanks a lot for the time.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jack, and thank you again for your continued support and contribution towards the trust fund and its travel window for the IMRF and the regional reviews. Thank you very much. Mamadou, I turn it over to you.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Donc, je vais parler en français. Ça balance un peu parce qu'on a
speak French. There'll be a bit of French to balance a little bit the many English and Spanish speakers. We don't have much time. So what I want to say now is that there are a lot of initiatives in place. We are currently in Gaborone in Botswana for the Pan-African meeting on migration here in Africa. We had a very interesting session this morning on the GCM, and we're able to have a good discussion between civil society actors and other stakeholders. So obviously there are many initiatives that are being developed in Africa, including the Abuja meeting. Monami, we invited you to attend, and you were there. I think it was an interesting meeting for us and a chance to speak, to discuss, and also to start the ball rolling. And we're now starting to talk to 4 African states, Cameroon, Nigeria, Senegal, and Mali. And the plan is to try and express clearly to them our need to communicate more and better. Again, as we have little time, one short comment. We know that we are structuring better the participation of stakeholders. And I think that is good. Some regions are more advanced. Some regions are maybe finding it a little bit more or easier to structure the discussion. But the missing link, and that is the point of my intervention, the missing link, we find it at the level of the municipalities. That is where we have a problem, and that is where translating the indicators into a local context is extremely difficult. So yes, we can talk. Yes, we have civil society organizations, but the problem is to have reference indicators that make sense, that are more precise, and that can then be referred back up to the national level and the global level, because progress takes place locally, and we find it hard to measure that. I want to thank Reverend Jack, who's just talked. Has been very supportive of the event of Abuja, and I want to thank everybody who can contribute to more people speaking together. Yes, we're making progress. Yes, we're better structured, but the indicators need to be fine-tuned more than they are, because otherwise they don't allow us to truly understand what is happening locally and to talk about that with member states or national governments. I think that's important for the future, and it's particularly important in Africa. I think Africa is making good progress, and we're having a good dialogue, but we need to be more precise with the local indicators. Obviously, language is an issue, because you can speak Arabic, Russian, and other languages, and we need to be able to use our languages, because that's how we can truly involve local actors and municipal actors. I'll stop there. I know we have little time, so I don't want to take more of your time. And thank you, of course, for organizing this event.
Thank you very much, Mamadou, for those suggestions. I'm going to ask colleagues to really keep your comments brief, because we have just a few minutes left, and we have a couple of hands still. So Mr. Hernan, and then Paula. Go ahead, Hernan.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes por aquí.
Hello and good afternoon from Latin America. Thank you very much for giving me the possibility of taking the floor. And thank you very much for inviting us to the exam. I would like to share a few remarks related to the following points. We believe that labor has to have an important role in the framework of the GCM and also in the exam process. So here come my recommendations from a trade union perspective. I am part of the American Confederation of Trade Unions of the Republic of Argentina. We believe that the GCM shall not lose track of the international labor agreements, the ILO conventions, as well as other conventions in the area of migrations. 193 more specifically. We need to increase the number of ratifications of these conventions, especially in the region. Then there is another important and relevant topic. It's always been important, but even more so today after the COVID-19 pandemics. It has to do with the social protection flow. We need to ensure social protection is a reality in countries of origin, transit, and destination. We also know that beyond the historic factors that have pushed forward migration waves, today climate change has to be taken into account, because climate change will be a source of more and more migration waves. Oftentimes, new migrants have to abandon their places of origin from one day to the next. So it is very important to ensure that in transit countries and countries of destination, their rights are respected. This is why it's so important that both employers and governments ensure such social protection rights in transit and destination countries, because migrants, beyond humanitarian aid, humanitarian assistance, which is very important at the beginning of their migration pathway, then they will need support to have access to a job, to labor, to decent work. It is also important to design agreements, regional agreements that enable the homologation of certificates and skills, because at the end of the day, if this does not exist, there is an immense barrier for migrants and for migrant workers to have access to a decent job. Last
Mr. Hernan, if I could please ask you to wrap up the comment. Thank you very much. Apologies, we have a bit of time left, so I'm trying to get to a couple of other speakers. If it's okay, I'm just going to call on maybe 3 more speakers and then bring it back to the panelists and our closing presenter to summarize the conversation. I want to make sure that we hear from colleagues from some of the regions we did not hear from so much yet. So I understand we do have a colleague from the African region. I'd like to call on her, Joyce Larnio, as well as a colleague from the European region, Erica Mess. If Joyce and Erica can speak after Paula, and then we'll have to end it there. So Paula, you go ahead first.
Yes, thank you very much. And we have quite a lot of members of the Women in Migration today, so I'm going to try and also include their suggestions in this comment. One important thing in order to have an inclusive and ensure substantive participation of organizations is that also the pre-consultations and multi-stakeholder consultations are not merely separate meetings with a few words from civil society or with the rapporteur in the member state meeting. So there should be an open spaces for discussion between stakeholders and member states. Also ensure that activities are participative, including a gender-responsive approach to ensure participation in review meetings of migrant women organizations. if limiting funding is available, we agree that there should be an open call of interest, including migrant women organizations and gender experts, to be important to the discussion, and prioritizing self-organized groups of migrant women that require not only funding but information and support to get their input in advance. Finally, I want to mention with the LatinAmerica consultation, the question, and the European consultation, where North America is being included in these pre-consultations and how. And also a comment to Pamela Villalobos on the issue of the Montevideo Consensus and the Conference of the Population and Development, that our concern is that the human rights of migrants will not be at the center, but they will be part of the development and control birth conversation. So how are you going to ensure that human rights of migrants are being part of this conversation? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. And then I think we're going to, it was Joyce.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. We are extremely happy to be part of today's meeting. And as you all know, civil society, I represent the civil society in Ghana. I'm one of the co-chairs, and we are happy to be part of this GCM process. Civil society are actually the ears and the eyes of whatever happens on the ground. So with this GCM, we believe that the opportunity to be part and then creating the advocacy strategies to get this information to the people is something we cherish so much, and we are very grateful. The implementation also is an opportunity for us to highlight some of the key issues that we'll be experiencing on the ground. So we want to say that the African Network, we would like to announce our presence and, if possible, be included in some of these network meetings so that we can learn, share, and then have a common front to present to the regional and probably the international space. So we are happy as civil society from Ghana to now be part of the whole process, and we are grateful. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Joyce. And I believe Erica may have left, but Erica is joining tomorrow, so they will come back and speak in the consultation tomorrow, I believe. I think given the time, we'll need to turn it over first to the panelists to see if there are any responses you'd like to make to the last few set of comments. And then lastly, I'll then turn it over to Paul Tacon to summarize some of the key discussions that we've heard. Okay, and if we can please ask colleagues to mute your backgrounds or have some backgrounds muted, because we can hear a lot of overlap. But if there are no panelists who'd like to come in, then I turn it over now to Paul. And for those of you who did not get to ask your questions, if you can put it in the chat box, and we're happy to come back to you with some replies. Please go ahead, Paul.
Thank you very much, Mon-Ami, and I'd like to thank all the participants in today's consultation, the speakers representing the regional networks from Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, and Europe for their really useful presentations. It's great to have an idea of where we're going, and I think it's really a testament that we're now in the second round already of the regional review. So this is something that is becoming a settled part of the global migration landscape and the discussions that we're having. So it's really positive that the process is moving forward, and I think there's a very clear commitment and a clear understanding of the GCM guiding principle, of the whole of society approach. Of course, I'm coming from ILO, so we understand very well the importance of stakeholders with our tripartite constituents. But it's really important. We see that there is a lot of importance being given to making sure that there's a diverse array of voices being included in these conversations on migration. Just from a personal perspective, I'm very heartened to see that the regional reviews are still going strong, coming previously from one of the regional commissions. I understand the importance of the regional element of migration and making sure that these specificities are brought out, which can sometimes get lost in a global review, and also, of course, in many ways, the regional reviews may be more accessible to stakeholders than the global reviews. So I think we really look forward to your engagement in these processes. So we've got a busy year ahead in March, in October, and also in September, I believe it was, for Africa. November for Latin America, with all the consultations going alongside that. And we've got 2 more to look at tomorrow. But with your help, I think we can really make these very detailed, very action-oriented discussions, especially because stakeholders are have particular insights that we really need to bring to the conversation. So just in terms of some of the key points coming out of the discussion, I think obviously there's, I can see by the number of hands that are still raised I apologize to those who weren't able to speak. There's this very strong interest in engaging in this process. And I think there's a really strong appetite for meaningful consultation. I think that's been clearly stated by a number of participants here, that this not just be a pro forma exercise, but we find ways to make sure that the voices of stakeholders are meaningfully brought out in the regional reviews and their conclusions. I think aligned with that, there's a very strong very strong understanding of the need for many different voices to be heard, for a wide and diverse array of stakeholders to be represented. Again, the GCM itself lists, I think, 10 different groups of stakeholders. So that's a lot of voices that need to be heard. And perhaps that there is a need to strengthen communication to make sure that everybody is in the loop on what's going on and how they can intervene and how they can be involved. In that regard, I think I'd just like to also add my thanks to the Methodist Committee on Relief for their extremely generous donation to the MPTF funding window to support stakeholder participation in these events. I think that kind of support is extremely important and will really help to achieve some of those objectives of diversifying the voices, making sure that we have a very good representation of people with lived experience of migration, with the experience of working on the ground with migrants, with critical insights to bring to the discussion. And in that regard, I think a last point that I would just like to emphasize, and I think, again, a number of speakers really kind of already talked about this, is that this is a really important moment for linking up different levels, starting at the very local level. I think one colleague mentioned the importance of local governments, bringing them into the conversation, to action at the national level. And in reality, of course, this is where we see a lot of the real work being done on the GCM, the regional review, bringing these different national experiences together, sort of looking at perhaps the level where most cooperation is also happening, before finally coming to the global level and bringing those diverse experiences to the discussions in New York at the end of 2024, and then looking towards the next International Migration Review Forum in 2026. So yeah, just I think a few points that I took away from the discussion. Really thank you again for your engagement on this. And very much looking forward to being part of this process with all of you. So thank you again to everyone who spoke today, everyone who participated, and I'll hand back to Mon Ami. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for sharing some of the the key insights from today. And I know there were many others and a lot of exchanges on the chat as well. So just in closing, we'd like to say we will circulate the summary from this discussion, as well as the recording, as well as a contact list for each of the regions that they have shared, so you can directly be in communication. I see that regional colleagues have also responded that they will be replying to some of your specific questions for different regional colleagues, and we will do the same for the different questions that have come in into the chat box. So thank you, colleagues, very much. We had 199 participants today across 3 regions, so clearly there is strong enthusiasm for engagement and solid, meaningful engagement, as Paul mentioned, and we heard from you. And we look forward to tomorrow's discussion, specifically for the Middle East, North Africa region and the Asia Pacific region. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you much more in the coming months. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
That's a small question. Why are you separating North Africa from the rest of Africa? Next, I would like to have an answer to this question. Why North Africa is cut from the rest of Africa?
Goodbye.
Just for next debate.
Mamadou, tomorrow is the region that is called Middle East and North Africa, as well as the region that is the African region, which also includes North Africa.
Okay, I hope. Okay.
So, yes.
Thank you.
For sure, for sure. Okay. They'll all be there.
Bye bye. Ya, gracias por la participación. Feliz día para todos.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.